The Hawksbee and Jacobs Daily Podcast from Talksport.
Now, you may recall, actually, it's 4 years ago we've just discovered that Chris Watney came in and saw us from Corinthian-Casuals and told us about a plan to head to Sao Paulo in Brazil to play against Corinthians Paulista, the club they spawned, really. We'll tell you more about that story in a moment. Well, it took a while for it to happen, but it did happen, and they've recorded it in a new documentary you can see on BT Sport tomorrow night, and Chris has rejoined us. Good to see you again.
Hello.
Yeah, it took maybe a little bit longer than you'd hoped to reach the screen, but tomorrow night we can watch the full 90-minute documentary.
Yeah, it's taken us 5 years to get to this point. A film commemorating those who fell in the First World War has taken longer than the First World War to fight. So it has been a bit of a slog, but it's been an amazing journey. Absolutely incredible.
And we should talk a bit about that before we come on to the trip to Brazil. One of the other themes of the documentary is that your club lost 106 men during the Great War, didn't they?
Yeah, it's something that we've kind of discovered as the film has gone along. We've obviously done more and more research. And there's an amazing historian at the club called Lou Walker who's found these amazing stories of these poor guys who lost their lives in the battle. And they lost 106 men because the club, its roots were in the public school boys, the Oxbridge University graduates.
Officer class.
The officer class. And in the First World War, trench warfare, they were the ones who were meant to lead their men over the top. And so that's why the club were decimated in the battles.
And you went to the war graves, didn't you? In France and Belgium.
Absolutely. The story of the film is that the great Corinthian club, the side credited with popularising football around the world at the start of the 20th century, they were going to Brazil in 1914 when they were still at sea when they discovered that the war had broken out. So they returned home, joined the army immediately, and they obviously lost a record number of men in the battle. And so we thought we would take the club back, the modern guys of the club, Corinthian-Casuals, back to play the matches that never happened 100 years ago. And then we ended it with going to the Somme and laying wreaths at the graves of the great Corinthians.
Now, the club, Corinthians Paulista in Sao Paulo, they were founded in 1910 by 5 railway workers, inspired by your club, Corinthian-Casuals. So were these guys that had worked or played for the club, or what was their link directly, the guys that ultimately founded it?
What happened was there was a chap called Charles Miller, and he played for Corinthians when we went down to play Hampshire. And we played Hampshire, but we only had 10 men. And so a school teacher said, why don't you use this young lad? And it was Charles Miller. And he was half Brazilian. And when he went home to Brazil soon after, the Corinthians gave him 2 footballs. And it was with those balls that he is said to have introduced football to the country of Brazil.
Wow.
When we went to Sao Paulo to play matches, he asked us to play against his side. And after that match, these 5 railway workers in the crowd were so inspired by how amazing the Corinthians were that they wanted to start their own club. And it was Charles Miller again who suggested to them, why don't you call it Corinthians after the Englishman? So that's how, and they added an S on the end to sort of differentiate it. So their sporting club, Corinthians Paulista.
Reading here, though, didn't realise this, I probably should have done, that a lot of this was inspired by the fact the club was in quite financial difficulties. Absolutely.
I've been a member of the club since 1999, and that's how I have got to know the story. And around 2013, the chairman said to me, it's tough times, we're really struggling to pay the bills, we might have to look at what we do in the future. And I'm a filmmaker, we're all amateurs at Corinthian-Casuals, we've all got other jobs, and I said, well, look, can I try and make a film to tell the world the story before it's too late? Because we've got to get it out there.
Yeah.
And that's how the whole project began.
You were really embraced, weren't you, by the Corinthians fans? They're kind of, like a lot of fans in South America, they're kind of fanatical, and there's some great footage of them at games. But they completely embrace you. They loved the history. They loved the fact that from your kind of, their humble beginnings was all about you guys.
Yeah, I think it's something which we kind of take for granted, because obviously football started here and we kind of take it all for granted. But across in Brazil, certainly the Corinthian story is amazingly held dear to people's hearts. And it was incredible. We turned up at the airport and there were scenes as if it was the Beatles arriving. I mean, it was unbelievable. And that's in the film where our star striker Jamie Byatt, who become a front page story in Brazil, was getting thrown up in the air by fans chanting his name. And you think, well, hang on, he's a scaffolder from Tooting. This is quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely amazing, and it was quite humbling how they do hold that history so close to our hearts.
30,000 people turned. We're not going to give the score away. People need to watch the program. But 30,000 people turned up to watch the match. And what's the average Corinthian-Casuals crowd, would you say?
I'd say probably about 130.
Right. So some of the boys, you can see, they look pretty awestruck when they go out there in the lineups before the game.
Absolutely. We had 2 national TV stations in Brazil televise it, and we had our manager Matt Howard, who drives a cab in London, up against Chiche, the Brazilian national team manager as he is today, playing this incredible match of amateurs from England against World Cup stars in Brazil. It was, it's all in the film, and it's incredible to watch.
If people don't know, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners do, but the penalty myth thing is always a good thing about the Corinthians. It doesn't apply today, but
especially in light of what happened on Wednesday, the City game.
Yeah, that was the Corinthian spirit. Explain to people what that is.
Well, the Corinthian spirit, that sense of British fair play and sportsmanship, that came from our goalkeeper who died at the Battle of Somme, called Thomas Rowlandson, and he used to step aside for penalties, and he refused to face a penalty because it was their belief as sportsmen that the intentional foul rule of a penalty was completely against what they thought football should be played. Yeah, they believed that it was impossible for a sportsman to have an intentional foul. And so they refused to even accept it as a rule and used to stand aside for penalties. And they also used to kick their own penalties wide. And that became the Corinthian spirit of this real sense of sportsmanship and fair play.
Now, these days, though, if you want to play, what happens if he dives and the opposition are going, that's not very Corinthian, is it?
I know.
I suppose that's the trouble. Yeah, it's always a stick to beat you with, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Mickey and Alex Stewart, they've got an association with the club, haven't they?
Mickey is our current president at the moment, and he played for the team back in the 50s. In 1956, when we got to the Amateur Cup final at Wembley, he just missed out because he was on tour with the England cricket team in the West Indies. And he flew home just for the match and got there just late. And then Alex Stewart, he played for the team in the 80s, and he still turns out for our vet side as well. So
brilliant. I bet he's pretty fit, actually.
Yeah, he is. He's still very fit. Yeah.
There's a couple of cameos in there people may recognise. Tim Vickery pops up, doesn't he? Tim is interviewed.
Tim's there, absolutely.
With us every week.
Has he got Sugarloaf Mountain behind him? He normally does.
Well, no, I think he's sitting in the studio.
Oh, okay.
I remember, or in his armchair somewhere. And we pop up on it, as you say. You come and film some stuff at the start of all this, and it was Andy really giving you a great pep talk. I'll say no more. People can watch it, but it's Andy's fantastic. I think you should have taken him over as a sports psychologist.
I know
he could have made the difference for you. But I'll let you watch it and see our little cameo. If we made the final edit, that'll be out there. So what about the relationship since? When was it you actually played that game in the end? Was it 2016?
No, we played the game in 2015.
Right.
And since then, the Corinthians have actually done a deal with us where they now sell officially the club's shirt and other merchandise on their website, in their superstores in Brazil. In Brazil, the Corinthians have 250 official club shops in Sao Paulo and the other cities. And you can buy a Corinthian-Casuals shirt there. So they've really gone out on a limb to try and help and support us.
So that's made a big difference to you financially.
Yeah, it has. I mean, the royalties aren't incredible, but hopefully we can build on it. And it is an opportunity now with the film coming out where it's something where we can really now build and hopefully find some sort of financial stability, because finding a sponsor is always tricky, and we're still trying to find a sponsor for next year.
Yeah.
BT Sport, who have been incredible, actually are our sponsors this year. But the fight will be who's our sponsor for next year. Yeah. So that's something. But the Corinthians have been amazing. They've really helped us try and find a solution to that problem.
Are you still playing finally?
I've just done a knee ligament.
Oh dear!
I've got a bad back. I did my ankle, so I'm out.
Done.
I think. Yeah.
You played. You had a little cameo in the game itself. I saw you on the pitch at the end.
Yeah, that was my last game, and I went on at 0-0, and I won't tell the score, but. Yeah, my contribution was never mind. But but no, I've given up. That was my last game.
Oh wow, not a bad way to go out.
Exactly.
Really.
The Hawksbee and Jacobs Daily Podcast.